You never expect your heart to betray your badge. And you never expect a prison to be the one place where love feels both impossible and inevitable. But that is exactly where Officer Claire Anderson found herself standing inside the cold steel corridors of a federal women's prison in Ohio, staring into the eyes of the one person she was forbidden to touch. It started with silence. Not the kind that brings peace, but the kind that screams louder than words. For weeks, Claire had been assigned to oversee Cell Block C, where discipline was razor-sharp and every mistake could cost lives. That was where she met Elena Ramirez, a 24-year-old inmate with a criminal record that looked like a cautionary tale but eyes that told a completely different story. Elena was not like the others. She carried herself with defiance, yet when she thought no one was watching, Claire saw the loneliness sitting heavy on her shoulders. She wasn't the monster the system painted her to be. She was a girl who had lost her way in a world too harsh to forgive her mistakes. The first time their hands brushed was an accident. Claire was handing Elena a tray of food through the bars, and Elena's fingers lingered just a second too long. Electricity. Claire froze, her heart hammering in a rhythm she didn't recognize, but she didn't pull away. Elena's lips curled into the faintest, saddest smile, and that moment became a seed planted in forbidden soil. Rules were carved into Claire's life like scripture. Do not fraternize with inmates, do not get personal, do not break the line between law and chaos. But with every shift, with every glance across the sterile hallway, she felt that line blur. Elena was not supposed to matter. And yet she did. One rainy evening, Claire found Elena sitting on the floor of her cell, her knees pulled to her chest, her breathing uneven. Something inside Claire shattered. Against every regulation, she crouched by the bars, her voice soft but firm. "What happened?" Claire asked. Elena looked up, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "Does it matter?" "To you." The words landed heavy. It was the first time Elena had pierced through the officer's armor, demanding something raw and human. Claire could have walked away. She should have walked away. But she stayed. "It matters," Claire whispered. For Elena, it was the first crack of light she had felt in years. For Claire, it was the beginning of an unraveling she could never control. The weeks that followed were both intoxicating and terrifying. Their conversations grew longer, stretching into the silence of the night when the halls were quiet and the guards' footsteps distant. Sometimes it was just a few stolen words, sometimes a glance that lasted too long, and sometimes a brush of fingers that lingered like fire. Claire hated herself for it. She hated how badly she wanted Elena to smile, how much she longed to hear her voice, how the sight of her made the fluorescent-lit corridors feel less like a cage. But at the same time, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. She wasn't just an officer anymore, she was a woman. One who wanted, one who ached. But prisons have eyes everywhere. And love, especially forbidden love, is a dangerous game behind bars. One night, when the storm outside roared against the windows and most of the prison was drowned in sleep, Claire unlocked Elena's cell door under the pretense of a routine check. Her hands trembled, her pulse raced, and every cell in her body screamed this was wrong. But when Elena looked up at her, startled, vulnerable, and breathtakingly beautiful, Claire knew she was already too far gone. "You shouldn't be here," Elena whispered. "Tell me to leave," Claire replied, her voice breaking. Elena didn't. Instead, she stood, closing the small distance between them until their breaths mingled. Their hands found each other in the dark, a desperate, trembling confession of everything they couldn't say aloud. And then, without permission, without logic, without safety, they kissed. It was not gentle. It was a collision of fear and longing, of two souls starved for touch. Claire felt her whole world tilt, like the prison bars no longer kept her safe but locked her inside her own desire. Elena tasted like freedom, like fire, like a sin that was worth every punishment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against Elena's. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Then let's be wrong together," Elena murmured. But outside their bubble, reality was waiting, sharp and merciless. Another guard had seen. And once the system knew, there would be no forgiveness. The report spread like wildfire through the prison. Whispers carried faster than footsteps, and soon, everyone in Cell Block C knew that Officer Claire Anderson had crossed the one line no one ever returned from. The warden's voice echoed in Claire's ears as she stood in the cramped office, her badge stripped from her uniform, her dignity peeled away piece by piece. You've disgraced this institution, Officer Anderson. You've disgraced yourself. Claire kept her chin high, but her hands shook. She wanted to scream that it wasn't disgrace, it was love. It was something real, something human in a place designed to crush humanity. But she said nothing. To defend herself would only make it worse. And Elena would pay the price too. That night, Claire sat alone in her apartment, the silence suffocating. Her badge was gone. Her future in law enforcement was gone. And yet, all she could think about was Elena. She pictured her behind bars, lips pressed together, trying to appear strong while the world punished her for daring to feel. Days passed. Weeks. Claire found herself outside the prison more often than not, circling the perimeter like a ghost, hoping to catch the faintest glimpse of the woman who had stolen her heart. She hated herself for it. But she couldn't stop. And then by some twist of fate everything changed. Elena's lawyer filed an appeal. Evidence surfaced: shaky testimony, mishandled paperwork, a string of failures in the justice system that hinted she had been given a harsher sentence than she deserved. It wasn't a miracle, but it was a spark of hope. Claire sat in the back of the courtroom the day Elena's fate was decided. She kept her head low, but her eyes never left the woman in orange sitting at the defense table. Elena's hair was pulled back, her face pale, but when her gaze flicked to Claire's, the world seemed to still. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, voice steady, "we are asking for a reduced sentence, acknowledging the mistakes made in the initial trial." The judge's gavel fell like thunder. Elena's sentence was cut nearly in half. She would be out in a year. For Claire, it was both salvation and torture. A year felt like forever, but it was also a promise. It meant waiting. It meant hope. Elena's last year inside was brutal. Whispers about her relationship with Claire made her a target. Some inmates taunted her, some guards treated her harsher, and loneliness pressed against her like a second set of bars. But every night, she held on to the memory of Claire's lips, Claire's voice, Claire's trembling hands holding hers in the dark. She held on to the promise that on the other side of this, something beautiful waited. And finally that day came. The gates opened and Elena stepped out, the sun hitting her face for the first time in years. She carried nothing but a plastic bag of belongings and scars that would never fully heal. But waiting for her, leaning against an old sedan parked near the curb, was Claire. For a moment neither moved. Elena's chest rose and fell, her heart pounding. Claire's eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. Then Elena walked forward. Slowly at first, then faster until she was running. And when she collided with Claire, arms wrapping around her, lips crashing against lips, the rest of the world disappeared. It wasn't the desperate kiss of two people trapped behind bars. It was freedom. It was forgiveness. It was love. They pulled back. Foreheads pressed together, both laughing and crying at once. "You waited," Elena whispered. "I'd wait a lifetime," Claire said. Life wasn't simple after that. Whispers followed them, judgment clung to them, and jobs were hard to find. But they built something brick by fragile brick. A small apartment with creaky floors, late nights filled with quiet laughter, arguments that ended in apologies and softer kisses. They fought for each other, and that was enough. One evening, months later, they sat together on the fire escape of their apartment building, watching the sunset burn the sky in shades of orange and red. Claire's arm was draped over Elena's shoulders, Elena's head resting against her chest. "Do you regret it?" Elena asked softly. Claire turned her head, pressing a kiss to Elena's hair. "Not for a second." And in that moment, with the city buzzing below and the sky painted in fire above, they both knew they had survived something bigger than prison walls. They had survived shame, fear, and judgment. What they had now was fragile, imperfect, and terrifying, but it was theirs. Love had found them in the unlikeliest of places. It had grown in the cracks of concrete, through the cold of steel bars, and against every rule ever written. And it had won. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.